Even after the captain vanished beneath the waves, the scars he left never disappeared. Sailors who survived his reign carried the memory of his cruelty into every harbor, warning that a pirate ship ruled by terror could never endure. The black flag still flew above the mast, but the crew understood that fear destroyed brotherhood faster than any Royal Navy broadside. In the end, the captain's greatest victim was his own command, proving that even among pirates, absolute cruelty always led to ruin.
Enjoy the video, and don't forget to subscribe.
Trace your finger along the map from Nassau toward the Windward Passage, and picture the year 1719 as the smell of rotting oak, boiling pine tar, damp hemp rigging, stale bilge water, sulfur, and wet salt drifted beneath low storm clouds, while snapping canvas echoed through every shroud and stay. Few horrors of the Golden Age of Piracy inspired greater fear than a captain who believed terror was stronger than loyalty. Among the countless sloops and brigantines roaming the Caribbean, whispers spread about one ruthless commander whose greatest victims were not merchants or naval officers, but the very men who sailed beneath his black flag. His swift sloop displaced approximately 95 tons, measured nearly 80 feet along the keel, and displayed pronounced tumble-home supported by massive white oak futtocks fastened using hand-forged iron spikes almost 11 inches long. Every seam required tightly packed oakum, hammered deep with caulking irons before repeated careening, covered the hull beneath boiling pine tar that hardened into a waterproof shell capable of resisting relentless tropical waters. Standing rigging nearly 1 inch thick stretched between towering lower masts secured by heavy deadeyes and iron chain plates, while every block creaked beneath the enormous strain of salt-soaked canvas. Pirate Articles of Agreement normally protected ordinary sailors through equal voting rights, compensation for wounds, and carefully divided shares of captured treasure. Yet aboard this vessel, those rules existed only until the captain's temper erupted. Men who questioned an order soon discovered that written agreements meant nothing once absolute fear replaced trust, and the crew slowly realized that the greatest danger aboard the ship no longer flew the Royal Navy's colors, but stood upon the quarterdeck with a drawn cutlass, watching every movement through cold, calculating eyes. The captain had once sailed legally beneath letters of marque issued during wartime, hunting enemy commerce in exchange for royal approval. Yet years of profit and bloodshed convinced him that discipline built through terror yielded greater rewards than any lawful commission. Every dawn began with meticulous inspections as boatswains examined hemp shrouds for fraying fibers, carpenters searched the hull for leaking seams, and gunners measured powder charges prepared from roughly 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur before sealing each cartridge inside carefully folded paper. Bronze cannon cast from an alloy averaging nearly 88% copper and 10% tin rested upon sturdy oak carriages reinforced with wrought iron fittings and thick breeching ropes that absorbed violent recoil after every broadside. The captain inspected everything personally, from rust forming upon boarding axes to the polished edge of every hanger sword. When one exhausted sailor failed to secure a larboard brace before a sudden squall struck, the heavy yard swung violently across the deck, splitting a rail and tearing expensive canvas. The damage itself proved minor, yet the captain viewed carelessness as treason. Without convening the crew according to traditional pirate custom, he ordered the accused dragged before the mainmast with wrists bound by tar-blackened hemp line. No vote followed, no witness offered mercy, and no appeal survived his decision. Before the silent crew, he pronounced immediate execution, declaring that fear preserved ships more effectively than friendship. The crack of the pistol echoed above crashing waves, and the man's body collapsed onto weathered planking stained by years of salt, tar, and old blood, while every sailor understood that a single mistake might soon place them beside him. The first execution transformed the atmosphere aboard the sloop more completely than any hurricane ever could. Conversations ceased whenever heavy boots crossed the quarterdeck, laughter disappeared from the forecastle, and even experienced quartermasters lowered their voices while checking water casks, biscuit barrels, and salted beef stored deep within the hold. every maintenance task became painfully deliberate. Sailmakers stitched torn canvas using waxed linen thread measured with mathematical precision, co-oppers tightened iron hoops around fresh water barrels to prevent leakage during violent rolling, and carpenters replaced damaged futtocks with carefully shaped white oak timbers secured by spikes heated before driving them deep into the frame. During gunnery drills, each bronze cannon received fresh grease upon its trunnions. Worm screws removed glowing debris after firing, and wet swabs cooled the barrel before another powder charge entered the muzzle. Fine grains of black powder scattered across rough planking released a sharp sulfur scent, while flintlocks showered sparks that briefly illuminated drifting smoke. The captain demanded absolute perfection because he believed the smallest failure could destroy an entire voyage worth thousands of pieces of eight. Soon another sailor disappeared after being accused of concealing several silver coins before the official division of captured plunder. Pirate articles of agreement usually imposed reduced shares, whipping, or marooning for theft from the common stock, yet this captain ignored every accepted custom. He ordered a crude gallows erected directly beside the mainmast using spare spars and thick crossbeams lashed together with doubled hemp rope. As the noose tightened around the condemned sailor's neck, the remaining crew stared without speaking, realizing that their own captain had become more merciless than many governors, admirals, or judges who hunted pirates across the Atlantic. Fear gradually destroyed every habit that had once allowed pirate crews to survive long ocean crossings through cooperation and mutual confidence. Experienced helmsmen hesitated before altering course around hidden reefs because a wrong decision invited execution, while topmen climbed swaying ratlines with trembling hands despite years of practice balancing above the deck. During one violent Atlantic gale, the wind exceeded everything the worn canvas could safely endure. Lower yards groaned beneath crushing strain. Mast partners shuddered as towering spars flexed with every savage roll, and green seawater burst across the waist of the ship, carrying loose coils of hemp rope toward the scuppers. The captain shouted for additional sail to remain set despite the danger, refusing every warning offered by his sailing master. When a topsail finally split from head to clew with a sound like cannon fire, he accused the sailmaker of deliberate sabotage rather than accepting the overwhelming force of the storm. The unfortunate craftsman had spent weeks repairing the cloth using heavy flax thread, reinforcing bolt ropes, and carefully replacing damaged cringles, yet evidence meant nothing against suspicion. Before dawn, the captain ordered another execution, this time by forcing the prisoner to stand at the rail with iron shot tied around his ankles. The splash echoed briefly before darkness swallowed both the body and the widening circles upon the sea. No prayer followed, no burial ceremony marked the death, and no name entered the ship's log. Salt spray quickly erased every trace from the deck, but the memory settled inside the minds of the survivors more heavily than the ballast stones resting deep within the keel. Weeks later, the consequences of ruling through relentless terror became impossible to hide. Navigation suffered because no officer dared correct the captain's mistakes. Powder magazines were inventoried in fearful silence, and vital repairs were postponed as craftsmen concentrated more on avoiding suspicion than preserving the vessel. Worm-eaten planking beneath the waterline expanded with every tide. Oakum loosened between strained seams despite repeated careening, and fresh leaks demanded constant labor from exhausted men working the chain pumps hour after hour. Even the finest bronze cannon, perfectly cast and maintained, could not save a ship commanded by fear instead of judgment. Hunger, sleeplessness, and despair quietly united the survivors against the man who had executed their comrades without mercy. They no longer saw him as the guardian of discipline, but as the greatest threat aboard the sloop. Every glance exchanged beneath the lantern light carried silent agreement that unless the reign of terror ended, none of them would survive another voyage. The captain had believed executions guaranteed obedience, yet every body thrown into the sea weakened the loyalty that no cutlass, pistol, or gallows could ever restore. The black flag still flew above the masthead, but beneath it, the crew had already begun choosing the moment when justice would finally turn against their own captain.